this video, we're going to talk about Scratch sprites. Sprites are game objects that we will have in our game. They do show up here in the sprite panel. And you may have one to begin with, maybe a cat, maybe something else, but this is an object that will appear inside of our actual game. All sprites have some attributes to them. I'm going to go ahead and zoom into this section so you can see it. Sprites will have a sprite name that you can change here. They also have an X, which is the left or right position, a Y position, which is up or down, and then a toggle visibility and a size as well as a direction. When we change the X value, you can see that it's going to also change its position in our game. X0 and Y0 are the very center of our program. At X -240 is the very left side of our program, and Y240 is the top of the program. As you can see, we can actually drag this guy around in our game and it will automatically update the X and Y position so you can see where it is at. We can also toggle the visibility here, show it on or show it off, and we can change the size. 100 is the default size that you've brought it in at. If we change this to 50, it'll be half the size as it was originally. There's also a direction which will allow you to change what direction the sprite is actually going to move. In here there is a rotate. You can see there's a rotate all the way around, as well as a center option that allows you to only have it go left or right. It won't rotate in a circle, it'll only go left or right. If you don't want this thing to rotate at all, you can go ahead and select the last option there, which is to do no rotation whatsoever. That's the basics of the properties of the sprite. Now in your upper left hand corner there's going to be a costumes tab that will actually allow us to change the sprite. If you click on the sprite here, this will give you a visual editing application that will allow you to change various things. First, on the left hand side are different costumes your sprite can have, which is basically different appearances that the sprite can show at different times. You can also name these costumes, which is definitely something you'd want to do. You can call this the walk 1 or whatever you need to do. And in here you will see that there is a visual graphic editing area. We do have different objects in here, and here is the actual representation of the sprite. If I click on an object, I can move that object around and change the appearance of my actual sprite. I could put them back and I can do whatever I need to. Each one of these has a circle node around the end of it. If I were to drag that in and out, I can change the size of this object. If I drag the center, I can distort it up and down. If I drag the right or the left, I can distort it left or right. Using these arrows, there's some arrows right here. If you rotate, you can change the direction of that object. You can also move it forward and backward in space. If I choose to move this behind, you can see that these other objects are now on top of it. Or if I move it forward, I can move the face to be on top of those objects. You can delete, copy and paste, or change a fill. If I have an object selected, I can change the fill, which is the center part of it, to a different color, or a saturation, or brightness. I could also choose to have an outline, or no outline, or pick a color and change the color of that particular outline. This object here will change the thickness of the stroke of that particular object. So I can change how thick that outline is and its color as well. If I need to flip it horizontally, I can do that, as well as flip vertically. And then there are other tools here. This is the selection tool that allows me to select different objects. If I have that, I can just selecting various objects. Next, I can change the vector points of these, which means that each of these shapes is basically built connect the dots. If I were to take one of these points and move it out, I will change the shape. I also have these handles, which changes the direction from one dot to the next. These are called Bezier curves, and as I move them up and down, I can make that either a direct path between the two dots, or I can make it more of a bend. Our next item here is the paintbrush, and that allows me to paint various objects in here. You can see it's working just like you would expect as a paintbrush. It will use whatever fill content you have here, so if I wanted to paint red, I can go ahead and paint around red. Next is the eraser, and the eraser does exactly what you'd think it would do. It would erase different parts of our graphic. Here I am erasing part of that object, and you can see that it has deleted in that certain area. Then we have the fill tool, which allows you to fill in various colors. Using the fill property, you can change particular fills very quickly. Then there is a text. You have to click and then add text. The text, you can change the font style, and then you would change its size by dragging that corner in or out. Next is the line tool. If you click and drag, it will create a line for you, and you can use that line as much as you need to create kind of shapes. If you want, you can hover over the end of a line to continue from an existing line and create closed shapes. Then we have our circle tool, which creates a circle. Our square tool, which creates a square. You can move around, and that is it. The other thing you should know is that sometimes objects are grouped. For example, this particular face is actually contained of many different objects. There is a group or ungroup option here at the top, and if I were to ungroup these, then they will end up becoming separate shapes that you can then move and utilize as you please. Now, this is what we call vector editing when we have individual nodes. If we were to convert this to a bitmap, which is this option down here at the bottom, instead of using individual nodes, it's going to become a bitmap, which means that there's going to be individual pixels, and we no longer have separate objects that you can select. Instead, what you have is basically a grid of pixels that you change. I can take my circle tool here, and I can push down this little object here, and when I'm done with it, it will become a pixelated area. And I cannot select and grab and change that again. Think of this more as a painting, where you are creating different painting areas and you are sort of moving things around, but they are permanently there. You can select areas and choose to do different things with this area. I can move this area, move this area, but I cannot go back and try to select an object and have it stay as we did in the vector mode. Back to costumes. You can have more than one costume, of course, and when you have more than one costume, you can change its appearance. Some of the things that we do with costumes is we actually create a walking sequence where I can right-click and duplicate this costume and go ahead and move a leg a little bit so that when I flip between these things, these two costumes, it looks like he's moving his leg. We'll show you how to actually make that happen programmatically in one of our other videos, but this is the idea behind the animation with costumes. You can use as many frames as you'd like to create that as well. Each costume has a different way of adding. You can choose a new costume, paint a new costume, have a surprise, or upload a costume. If you were to upload an animated GIF, it would separate each frame or each sequence of that animation into its own separate costume. Once you're back into your code, you can see that I have this large cat again. Let me reduce its size back to normal. And one of the things I can do is go to looks and have it switch to costume. You can see costume 3 is selected. Now here's costume 2. And if I go to costume 1, that is our original costume. Again, down here at the bottom, you can select to choose a certain sprite if you'd like from the library, or you can paint from a blank canvas, come up with a surprise, or upload an image that you made outside of Scratch. That's it for sprites.